Oh. Hi, good evening, and sorry about the delay. I seem to have set myself broadcasting up to myself, and now I got an echo, which is very clever. Hang on a second. Let's try that. Oh, there we go. We'll gradually get used to all this idea of streaming and broadcasting, won't we? It's here to stay. It's not something that's going to go away, and it's a really good tool. So tonight, I wanted to talk about tomato growing and successful tomato growing, because it's a major issue, because that's the one thing that we do love to grow in the UK, and the big problem is that tomatoes aren't from the UK. Now, a lot of the growing techniques and the ideas that we'll talk about you can use on all sorts of other things, but the main thing is I want to try and use it to give you the best results. You can ask questions as we go along tonight by typing into the comments boxes, are both on Facebook and also on YouTube, and I can see them pop up here, and I'll answer them as we go along. Going to go through tomatoes. I have tomato plants here with me to show you, and just the best techniques. And the biggest problem we've got in the UK is the weather. So tomatoes come from Central America. Have you noticed it's not exactly Central America weather at the moment, and we're all chomping at the bit to go out and plant tomatoes. And it's not just the frost. It's the problem of low temperatures. They do not like cold roots. It sounds like a phrase. They don't like it up them, but they do not like cold roots. So even if tonight there wasn't a frost and these were planted where it was really cold, even outside is wrong at the moment, because the roots that are in there are just going to suffer. They're very delicate, and you can just see the white roots there. They suffer so badly. So cold and wet together, really bad, not good at all. So don't do that now, but I'm going to give you lots of ideas and the ways of doing it, and I've got some pictures to show you, which will be a memory jogger, and I've scattered compost all over the place. Good job, there's no one here to see. So tomatoes, how are we going to grow them? Tomatoes are tender, like cucumbers and like basil and pepper and so on, and that's a real problem. Have you got a greenhouse? Are you just going to grow them on the patio? If you're going to go in a conservatory, because it does vary of when you plant them, when you put them in, and it also varies on when you will get a crop. But the most important thing is getting them off to a good start. We've talked in the past about sowing seeds too early, and if you sow them too early, then the plants get stunted, they can get cold, and they don't establish. But the real answer to it all is to sow late or to plant late, because the later plantings will always catch up and go past earlier plantings unless you've got heat. So if you've got a heated greenhouse, from now it's a bit easier to do. Heated at night, you need temperatures of about a minimum of 10 degrees. And the problem is we're getting outside temperatures of 2-3 degrees, and the problem that is going to do damage to the tomatoes. So my tip is, if you've got tomatoes, don't put them into it. Even a heated greenhouse will be tricky at the moment unless you've got a lot of heat on there. Cold greenhouse, leave it a couple of weeks. You certainly need to get some warm weather. Normally and often at this time of year, the temperatures are shooting up, and we've got a chance for them to start growing. But because it's so chilly at the moment, at the beginning of May, end of April, just now, they're never going to get going properly. So just hold back. If they're already growing, keep them on the windowsill, keep turning them into the light, and you'll get away much better. So heated greenhouse you could do now. Unheated greenhouse, plant them out in a couple of weeks. And if you don't have a greenhouse at all, I'd be waiting till at least mid-May. Now that's only a couple of weeks, but if it's still chilly like this, you might be saying towards the end of May to get them to the best. When you put them in a greenhouse or even outside, they need to acclimatize. So if you've had them in the house, or you're buying a tomato plant fresh, say from us, before they go in, it's best to get them in situ. Now, I'm going to show you the ways of growing them, but one of the classic ways is a grow bag. Before you plant them in the grow bag, just stand them on top of the grow bag for a couple of days to get used to the lower level, down at ground level where it's cooler, before they go into the fresh compost, which could be very cold and could do a lot of damage to the roots again. So just bear that in mind. You need to phase the plants into the greenhouse unless you've got heat. So it's always a good idea. We'll talk about mini greenhouses, we'll talk about patios, and at the end I have if you can last to the end, will only be half an hour or so, I have a prize draw of something I will show you through, and all you'll need to do is make a note of this hashtag, and it's called Love Ferndale, and you just need to put it into the comments box at some time while I'm talking, and then I will randomly somehow select one at the end, and then you can come and collect, if you live locally, a very good growing system that was introduced just in the last 12 months, which is really easy to do. So I'll show you how to do that. All plants have 4 requirements: temperature of some sort, light, water, and food. And if you, in tomatoes, it's a bit more exacting. You need to get that right. So light, not such a problem from now on. Temperature, as I have already mentioned, is a massive problem at the moment. Watering in combination with temperature can be a disaster if you get it wrong. And food, that really is the last part of it, because that's the part that comes as the plants are growing nicely. So let me just talk about plants. If you want good flavor, it's often down to variety and a little bit about the amount of water and to the type of food. But let's talk about plants. This is a traditionally grown seedling tomato. This one is called, it's just a plum tomato, very popular now. Let's get the camera to focus on that. Oh, this is the tricky part. They don't have this problem on the BBC, do they? So this grown from seed, these are what they call the seedling leaves here. They don't look anything like the tomato leaves at the top. Grown from seed, always done really well, but there's something better. And it's a grafted tomato. So the difference here, and you can really see these are bigger plants, is right down here. You can see that little nodule there, and you can also notice that the root below it is a different color to the top part, and just about see that. So this is the fruiting section, and this is the root. And what they've done just there where my finger is they've grafted the fruiting part onto a really strong root system. These are more disease resistant, root disease resistant. They're stronger growing. Weirdly, they actually make the fruit ripen earlier. And also they give a minimum of 3 times the amount of fruit that one of these would do. And it's nothing to do with the size now, it's to do with later on. So these are definitely worth thinking about, particularly if you've never grown before, because they're easier to grow, they're more productive, they fruit earlier, and you'll get 3 times as much fruit. And we've actually had a customer who did exact comparison in his own greenhouse, used half his greenhouse with grafted, half with seed raised that he'd grown himself. He actually got 4 times as much fruit. He weighed every single fruit that he got off his plants. He weighed every single one, and he got 4 times as much. But the company Sutton's, who you'll know very well, are saying 3 times as much. So it's a phenomenal reintroduction, really, because the Victorians always grafted their tomatoes because they had so many disease problems in the root. And we'll come back to that in a little bit. So I'm going to flick on to some pictures for you to help the next bit. It should bring up. It hasn't done. Let me just do what I've got to do. Share this screen. That's the one. Here we go. Okay. So I'm just going to pop myself in at the side there. So we're all looking for success, aren't we? So let's just flick that through. And there. Those are. Let's go back a step. That's what we're looking for. Really healthy tomatoes. The smell of tomatoes is fantastic, both growing them and picking them. So how are we going to grow them? Compost, really important. Traditionally, going back far enough, tomatoes were grown in the soil in greenhouses, but the problem was that they gradually built up diseases in the soil that every year got worse and worse and worse. So the grow bag was invented and introduced commercially in the 60s for commercial growers, because in there was pure peat, it was completely sterile, and they could eliminate any contact with the soil. They actually laid them on white plastic to reflect more light back up to give them a higher yield. These Tomarite planter bags, and there's 2 or 3 other makes out there. We also do the Westland when we can get hold of it. These are bigger and fatter than the normal grow bags, and they're much easier to water. And if you've never grown before, then I would use grow bags. You get control, you get watering right. Little tip: if you look at the side of the bag, there's like a fold where the plastic tube was made. Just put some little slits in there. So if you should overwater, some extra water can get out. It's true to say that if you give too much water to tomatoes, it damages the roots and they don't get going. And you can see it here being used inside a growing house. And there's 3 plants in there, and they're growing really well, and they've got loads of tomatoes on, and they're dead easy to grow. Here's a good product, and there's a slightly different version of it here because that one's not available anymore. But I've got them here. This is little pockets almost that you stand on the top of the grow bag, and you even put a bit more soil into where the plant is, but you water through the hollowed bit on the outside, and it gradually seeps in. So again, you can go out in the morning and you can put it on there, and you will, it gives them a bit more sort of slow watering. It's great to see 2 people have put Ferndale in. Should be hashtag love Ferndale, but I'll let you off. Remember, you can put questions into the comment box and I'll keep an eye on those and we'll answer those as we go along. So this just with a grow bag, these feeder watering devices on the top. Tomato food is really important. So Tomarite is the classic standard, still the most popular tomato feed, but also there are organic types from MaxiCrop, which we also stock. Great way of feeding. The thing about tomato feed is they're very high in potash, and potash is what produces flowers and fruit. Tomatoes need so much, though, that in tomato food, they actually have to add a lot of nitrogen, and nitrogen produces green leaves. If you overfeed, your leaves will go purple, and actually the growth will slow down. And if you underfeed, you will get yellow leaves. Now, you can see on the picture here, there's some yellower leaves at the bottom. That's not unusual as the plants get taller. But regularly feeding with the proper tomato food will give you much the best results. Watering is a big issue. Years ago, they've researched and found that if you gave it more than 1 litre per plant at a time, it will damage the plants. So that's a difficult part if you're out at work every day. So watering in the morning is good. Watering in the evening, again, is excellent. But you can also get these amazing trays from Hoselock, which you can use year after year after year. And you can see you lay the grow bag on the top. There's some inserts that push up into the grow bag, and then the water from the reservoir comes up from below. And also what I really like about these, and I'll talk about support in a minute, you can push the canes through the bags and the tray holds the canes up as well. A really easy way of watering. You can use micro irrigation, and although it's a hydrangea in the potty, you can see that you can get these drip nozzles and the kits that you just attach to a hose pipe. Some of them you can attach to a water butt. We even have one that's a solar powered one that responds to the light, and you can add that to a water butt or to the mains. A bit more expensive, but if you're growing a lot of tomatoes in a greenhouse, a great way of making sure they're all getting the water in. You can just adjust the nozzles so that they have just the right drips, and that will drip all day. So if you get a day like I've had this week, when it gets warmer where it's cloudy in the morning and then the sun comes out, the plants will need more water, but this will make sure they've got it. Talking about support, you can see that the watering tray has the supports in it. The top one is a wire frame that holds the canes upright, and then also the growing frame, little greenhouse on the side there, has holes in the top so you can push the canes through, so that you can then fasten the tomatoes to the canes. And then what I'm going to give you as part of this Love Ferndale, hashtag Love Ferndale, is the bottom one there, which is from Elho. It's called a growing wall, and you can plant tomatoes in it, and then you can grow them up through the frame, either inside the net or leave the net off and attach them. Or so that's going to be the prize draw if you put Love Ferndale in there. But also they do a single version. These have got reservoirs as well to make them easier, and this one has a tall frame for a single tomato, so a great way of doing it. So put your tomato or general purpose compost in, and multi-purpose compost in there. But we're giving away to anybody who's still here at the end one of those middle ones there at the bottom, the Elho growing wall, they call it, as a prize draw. So don't forget, hashtag Love Ferndale. Sandra Moore says, let me fucking flick that up onto the screen. Sandra says, my lower leaves have gone white. Could they be sun scorched? It depends how tall they are, Sandra. If they're quite tall now, it may be a bit of that. It may be that the nutrients being taken out of the leaves as the plants grow because there's not enough food. But growing tip, you don't need to start feeding tomatoes until the first flowers have set. Now that sounds a bit odd, but there's enough food in the compost. If you start feeding earlier, it can disrupt the flowering. So wait till the first little fruit have formed, then you start your feeding. So don't worry too much at this stage. It might be cold as well. So Sandra, just tell us, how are you growing them? Are you growing in a greenhouse? Are they cold already, and so on? So just flick that back up and I'll answer that. Cara says a good companion plants for tomatoes. Marigolds are very good companion plants because they, I wouldn't plant them in the grow bags, but grow them in pots separately. Marigolds and the older variety of marigolds, the French marigolds particularly, they're quite smelly and they will put off aphids. And we'll come back a little bit later too if you do get pests and diseases. Let's move on with the slide. So one of the things that's really important in the taller growing varieties is side shooting. And you can see on the picture there, side shoot. And there are some on these tomatoes, this grafted tomato, you can just see one there. They need removing, particularly in the early stages, because all the energy will go into these side shoots and not into the fruit and the flowers. You will always find the strongest one is just below a truss being where the fruit forms. So always take those off. Now, there's a lot of people pinch them out. The danger of pinching them out is it crushes the stem. So if you can use a little sharp knife or a pair of snips, cut it as short as you can without damaging the main stem and the leaf that they're in between, you'll get less infection in them. So remove them, apart from all of them, except that is the tumbling sorts, because you want them to be really bushy. So I'll just turn my notes over there so we can carry on. So yeah, side shoot them as they get taller. Tying them up, as I showed you the canes and the cane supports, what you can do if you've got a greenhouse is with some hairy string is to attach that round the grow bag at the bottom, literally tie a loop round and take the string up to a hook on the greenhouse, and you gently bend the plant around the string. This is how they do it commercially. You don't have to tie them in then, but it's sort of you wrap the string, which is rigid and fixed, around the stem, and it's a really good way of keeping them upright and takes a lot of weight. So that's some little tips on how to grow them, what you can use to be growing them with. Pest and disease can be a problem. Two major pests, well, two insect pests, one whitefly, one greenfly. There can be a bit of a problem if you get them in the greenhouse. Greenfly spread viruses, so just keep an eye on that. But you can spray them. You can use. There's some really good in or organic types now, so you haven't got to worry about any buildup and damage to other pests. So there's only just now becoming on the market fungicides for fruit and veg, and this has been a problem for a while. This one's a new one this year, and I think you can use that on tomatoes. Yeah, outdoors and greenhouses. So bee friendly, ladybird friendly, pesticide free, and it works on a section of soap. And this one here, Plant Guard, these are what you may have heard me on the radio on Sunday mornings on Radio Sheffield called surfactants. These are both surfactants, and they work as a fungicide, and they also work as a pesticide, but they're not actually either. They actually form a physical barrier between the pest, either disease or a pest, and the leaf. So they will actually remove, the insects will fall off when you spray them. But also the third and the biggest problem that's starting to come in now with tomatoes is a thing called potato blight or tomato blight, depending where you get it. And the surfactants will help prevent that. Now, what I would do is do an occasional spray on, and you need to repeat it as the plants grow, because the new growth is not going to be covered with the surfactants. And that way, the plants are fully protected. They come in a little spray. There's a variety of them. You can get them also now where you can make a concentrate up if you're doing a lot. You can use them on fruit trees. You can use them on roses. You can use them fully around the garden without damaging any beneficial insects. It only affects the sap-sucking insects, but it also prevents diseases. Just think of diseases as you have to prevent them rather than getting rid of them once you've got them. So just keep your eye open for early signs of diseases, powdery mildew, black spot on roses. And you really don't want tomato blight on tomatoes, because the whole plants will collapse. Just an idea as well, if you're in a greenhouse growing situation, they like fresh air. So on a warm day, have the vents open, even remove side panels from the lower part of the greenhouse if you've got glass panels, to let the air blow through. And you can just shut the doors and the vents at night. The side panel, it won't matter so much if it's open for the night, just to get some ventilation through. Cucumbers are a bit different. I have a cucumber here, another grafted one, which is definitely the best way of growing cucumbers. Cucumbers like it humid, so put them at the far end from the door. They'll be much happier. But again, because these are grafted, and cucumbers particularly are prone to fungal diseases, then these healthy, strong rootstocks do make a big difference. You get loads of fruit off them. Sandra's come back and she's just said, I've just started them in the conservatory. The variety is mini bulbs, so they're quite small. Just watch the nighttime temperatures. When it's as cold as it is outside, if even without heat, the temperatures are dropping quite low. So either put a little heater in there or just cover them up in the evening with some fleece. That's always a good idea. Don't squash them though. That just keeps a bit of heat in there, or bring them back into the warm part of the house. Linda Hughes, if you're talking about Verbena, the Bonariensis, the tall ones, we do have a few, and the hanging basket types are just starting to arrive. But again, you need to keep them protected from the really cold weather. So where did we get to? Yeah. So, and we've got another, if you're finding some plants that have been suffering from the cold and so on, we have this product. It's an organic product from Germany called Plant Invigorator, which you can spray on, and it's a bit like a foliar feed, but it's a good way of just picking the plants up, and they really do benefit from that. So let me just check back on my notes. Oops, here we go. Just a bit of news on summer bedding, because Linda was asking there about Verbena. Some bedding type of Verbenas and Hassengui baskets plants we're starting to bring into stock. We're holding right back because of the cold weather. It's causing us a nightmare because we have to wrap them up at night and bring them into the building. But don't rush to your bedding plants, because the forecast for the next 7, 8, 9, 10 days is still quite cold at night. And some of the plants like Busy Lizzies, marigolds, and salvias just hate the cold weather. It's not just the frost, it's the cold weather. You will get frost damage, but cold weather, they won't thrive. So hold back. Now there's probably going to be a shortage of bedding again, because there's all sorts of issues with supply. But if you've got a cold greenhouse, you can start a hanging basket now, or you can plant your pots up, because they're probably going to be okay. Bit of fleece over them overnight. When I say overnight, probably from about now, while there's still some warmth in the compost. The fleece will just trap a bit of heat in there. If you've got concrete base, that's a really good heat sink, and what you can actually trap the heat under it, under fleece, and it will radiate it through the night, which can be quite good as a bit of an insulation and a bit of heat. So, but don't rush into these tender plants. I know that the big stores have been selling marigolds for weeks now. I even heard they're selling them in the middle of Scotland in the big stores, but it's far too early, and we are over the next few nights getting some more frost, and it's just too cold at the rest of the week. So anybody else want to have a quick go at the live draw? So all you got to do is #LoveFerndale, and you can enter that. I'll leave that for you to put up. Any more questions? Because I'm not going to keep you. We're just going to go for about half an hour, as we will try and do on a fairly regular basis. But mostly when it's sort of fairly urgent, where you need to know some information. So just to recap on tomatoes, they don't like the cold. If you haven't got that message tonight, you weren't listening. They don't like the cold. They want to be in the Middle and Central America and South America. They love they don't want it too humid. They like it dry atmosphere, but they do need a bit of heat. So it's not warm enough to put them into cold greenhouses. It'd be okay in heated greenhouses if you can make sure the temperatures, there's just a bit of interest. If you buy an electric fan heater, which is the best way to heat a greenhouse, you've obviously got the cost of getting the cables there, but if you've got the cables there, electric fan heaters are definitely the best over paraffin or Cala gas. You can get some gas propane heaters. The reason being that at this time of year, when it's warm enough in the day not to need heat on, paraffin and the gas heaters will stay on 24 hours a day. So it's going to cost you more at this time of year to heat a greenhouse than it is to run an electric fan heater. Now, I know when we were kids, you always got told off for leaving the fan heater on at home because they use so much heat or so much electricity. But paraffin or Cala type propane gas will not only cost more because they stay on all day, whereas a thermostatically controlled fan heater would switch off in the daytime. Also, apart from now, we're more concerned about carbon dioxide, but from a growing point of view, they put a lot of humidity. The byproduct of burning is carbon dioxide and water. That humidity can cause diseases, or the conditions for diseases to get going on. So a fan heater, if you can put the power in, is absolutely brilliant, because it will keep the air moving. And a fan heater that runs all day with the fan on is even better, because you're keeping the air moving, and the circulation of air is definitely the best way to keep the diseases down and keep the plants growing better. So a fan heater that stays on, but the thermostat kicks in and out with the heat during the night is brilliant. You can insulate a greenhouse, which did a report about 25 years ago. If you bubble glaze a greenhouse, you will reduce your heat usage or your fuel usage by 45%. And if you're only planting one end to start with, then get a piece of polythene and attach it down in the middle of the greenhouse and move it down the greenhouse as you put more things in. So you're only heating one end of the greenhouse and heat the opposite end to the door. So I hope those are useful tips as well. There's all sorts of good stuff to do. Remember on the watering, tomatoes do not like too much water, so make sure you've got drainage down the sides of grow bags. I would suggest not growing in the soil in your greenhouse. It will build diseases up over the years and you will get root diseases and the plants will just die, particularly cucumbers. Use grow bags or use pots that are not in contact with the soil. Literally, the best thing to do in a greenhouse is to pave or concrete the whole base. It's very easy to sterilize when it's empty, and you can just sit your pots and so on there. If you're going to use the tomato growing houses, we've got a really good solid one, much chunkier than most of them out there, and it's got a device inside it that you can slide the bars up on the back and the front to help support the tomatoes, and that's just come back into stock because they're made in China and they've just literally arrived again this week. They're really good. Good way of growing tomatoes. They've got really good zips on them. You can ventilate them, and you'll get good tomatoes if you grow in a small way. And one last thing before I do the draw, is if you want to get children growing a tomato is definitely the best way of doing that. At the end of the month is this thing that I invented 5-6 years ago called National Children's Gardening Week, and that is the best time to give a child a tomato plant. They can put it in a pot that's about 10 to 12 inches across. You can grow it on the patio in the sunniest position you can give it. They're probably going to be warm enough anyway at that stage. They'll see it grow. You can help them, encourage them to help it grow. You can feed it with them. And then when the fruit forms, they've got something they can pick themselves. The tumbler varieties are probably one of the easiest sorts if you don't mind them tumbling, so you can grow in a hanging basket, because you don't have to pinch them out. You don't have to do any side shooting. You get lots of small fruit, but there are a lot of taller varieties with small fruit, like the ones we buy in like Gardener's Delight. But there's some really good mini plum varieties now that you can grow like you get in the supermarkets, and they're really, really easy to grow. But hang on until we get to half term. That's when National Children's Gardening Week is. And it's getting celebrity following now. Prue Leith was gardening with her children 2 years ago. It didn't really happen last year, and tweeted pictures of her and her grandchildren gardening under the hashtag of Children's Gardening Week. So look out for that. If you've got kids, we'll be doing activities and things you can do, which will be really fun. So great. Thanks for being there. And you can watch back again if you missed any of the tips. You can add comments later, which we can pick up and help you answer. Cara, we don't actually do pond plants at the moment. We were going to do them this year, but there's a massive supply problem, so we're going to leave it till next year, unfortunately. I'm going to pick a number. So how many have we got here? Bear with me. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to not do them in any order. I'm going to go for number 4, which is, let's go back, 1, 2, and it's Dean Swift. So congratulations, Dean. If you'd like to send us a message via Facebook with your details, we'll pick it up tomorrow, and I'll send you something so you can bring it in or show people in the garden centre. We'll put one by for you in the morning and have good fun with it. A great device, really good, really easy way of growing things. You can grow other things in them like French beans, small runner beans, various other vegetable type things, or you could just grow flowers in them. So you'll have great fun with those. Remember, there's also a single pot version. This is the single version of it. It's got a reservoir in the bottom, and you can hear rattling inside is all the framework. So you can do single potted ones for tomatoes and various other plants as well. So thanks for being there, and we'll be back fairly soon. Not sure when, about 2 or 3 weeks. And we'll probably be looking at hanging baskets, because we'll be right in the middle of hanging basket or patio season. And we may be able to produce a little video that we can insert for you to see how to do it. And enjoy your gardens. Keep popping in. We've got lots of people here to give you good advice. And although they run off their feet because everyone's very busy, they're always willing to answer questions when you're coming in to buy things. So great to have you with us. And please be prepared to share this to other people afterwards. You can do that when because it'll hold it there both on YouTube and on Facebook. And you'll be able to, and you can go back as well if you need to look at it again. So congratulations, Dean, and send us a message via Facebook and we'll pick that up tomorrow. So have a great weekend and a happy bank holiday and have good gardening. Bye.